All right, welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. A big applause to you for joining me on Tuesday. It's Tuesday, September 19th, and I'm excited because we're going to be talking about podcasting today. Podcasting has absolutely changed my life, and it can change yours too. It's not as hard as you think. It's also not just push button easy either, which is why I'm going to tell you exactly how you can get started today. And whether you have a podcast already or not, you're going to get some value out of this. In fact, you're getting a little bit of a window peek inside of what we have inside of our All Access Pass and our brand new course, Power Up Podcasting 3.0. That's right. Our 3.0 version is just launching today. And to commemorate that, I wanted to go live and give you some free training. And whether you take advantage of what I'm about to share with you or not, I want to leave you going home with some stuff that's going to get you inspired at least. So, first thing I want to do is ask you a quick question, and you can let me know in the chat. Do you listen to podcasts? Yes or no? Now, I'll tell you the sort of statistic in the US that we'll see in just a minute here, but I'm going to guess that we're going to skew a little bit more on the yes side here. Many of you do listen to the SPI podcast. I listen to several podcasts as well. And for real, 53% of the population is currently listening to podcasts. And actually, that number continues to grow every single year, which is really amazing. The number of people listening to podcasts has increased by 40 million in the last year, which is pretty wild. It continues to grow quite rapidly. Now, the second question I want to ask you, because we're kind of getting a sense of who's in the room right now, I want to ask you how many podcasts you are subscribed to. Now, this was something that when I got into podcasting in 2010, I was like, well, most people only subscribe to one or two, right? And I've had to actually cut down because I really wanted to focus on what I was doing versus just consuming all the time. But in general, most people are listening to a lot of podcasts. In fact, the average number of subscriptions that a person has is 8. There was some studies done, and recently this was just something that was published back in March of this year. 8. I see 770, says Nicholas. That's crazy. Van says 25, over 10. 13, says Cynthia. Yes, so quite a bit. And the average American listens to 8 different podcasts per week. So that's a lot of consumption, which is pretty amazing. Now, when you are listening, this is the final question I have for you. When you are listening to podcasts, like say you sit down or you get in the car or whatever, wherever it is that you're listening, how long are you listening to podcasts for? Now, I'll tell you, when I'm sitting and listening to podcasts, I put those earbuds in. I'm either going on a walk or I'm doing a workout or I might be on a drive or something. Do the dishes a lot when I'm listening to podcasts. It's like quite a bit of time, quite a bit of time. So I'm curious to see how long your sessions are. And what's really interesting is that when you think of other kinds of content, right, like blog content, a person may spend 5 to 10 minutes reading that thing and they're skipping over, they're looking at the different headlines and there's all these distractions, other things going on. 5 to 10 minutes is pretty generous when it comes to blog content. With YouTube, here on YouTube, unless you're watching a live stream, and again, hopefully you stick around to the end, we got some special stuff for you. 3 to 5 minutes is actually really good. Holding a person's attention on video and hooking them is kind of difficult. And we're going to be talking about that when we get to video podcasts later today. That's something that has definitely changed as podcasting has evolved over time. And we're going to show you how to keep people on your audio and video a little bit longer. And then, of course, social media. People are seeing your tweets and posts and Instagrams for less than a minute, and then they move on, right? With podcasts, as you can see here in the chat, we have 30 to 60 minutes, 45 minutes, a couple of hours, because my dog needs a lot of walking, says Max. I understand that, right? So we have a lot of time that we as creators can now get in front of people and actually give them more of us, more of our brand, more information, all those kinds of things. And in fact, this was from Inside Radio recently, as you can see, March 14th. Podcast listen time jumps as more listeners are now tuning in weekly. So these are all really good signals for us. If you are interested in a podcast and starting one, this is a good time to do it for sure, because the listens are up, the time people are listening is great. And you might be wondering though, but Pat, aren't podcasts saturated? I hear this all the time. And actually, we're not. I posted this just the other day on Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter. I'm not going to call it X right now. That's just weird to me. We are still in the early days of podcasting, similar to how blogs felt in the early 2000s. It may feel saturated, but with a little over 1 million active podcasts, we're definitely far from it. So yeah, 1 million. Compare that to tens of millions of YouTube channels, hundreds of millions of blogs. But I was corrected. In fact, somebody named Matt replied and said, Pat, I understand the sentiment, but you're actually wrong. it's actually a lot less active podcasts. There are a total 4 million podcasts in the index. And look at that number right there. Less than a half million published in the last 90 days. The opportunity is ripe, my friends. So if this does not excite you as a future podcaster, well, then you're in the wrong room. I don't want to waste your time. You can leave and you can go on with your day. But if you are interested in podcasting, and perhaps even more so now, and you are convinced that this is a platform for you, then throw a fire emoji in the chat if you're ready to get going. Now, as you're throwing this fire emojis in here or leaving, I want to fly at you with this information really quick before we get started here. Number one, try to reduce the distractions. This is a real presentation, something that was prepped, something that was rehearsed, etc. And 3 quick things. Number one, this is going to be fun and interactive. As you can see, I've already asked you a bunch of questions. You're going to have some time to ask questions to me directly at the end as well, and you're going to learn quite a bit. So if you want to write this down, that's fine. A replay will be available for a short period of time, but this is something that I definitely want you to take in. And then finally, you're getting a taste of, like I said earlier, Power Up Podcasting, which is our brand new course. We've had it since 2017, but the 3.0 version, now with a video podcasting module, etc., is now up and available. And we'll share more information about that later. But moving on, I want you to imagine yourself in front of a room like this. Maybe that's you back there, right? And you're doing a presentation. Hopefully your slides are a little bit more interesting than what we see here on this particular slide, but that's okay. There's about maybe 25 to 30 people in the room. How would you feel if you were actually in front of this audience, right? It's a little bit nerve-wracking to be in front of an audience, a live audience. I mean, we have nearly 400 people live watching now, which is pretty crazy, and it's still intimidating to me. I still get scared before we go live sometimes. But imagine yourself in a room in front of 20 to 30 people. You can do a lot with that. You can present, you can share information, you can build relationships there, right? Now, a lot of people, when they start a podcast, you might start and only have a few people listening, maybe 30 to 50, just like that size of a room. And you go, oh, it's not successful. But with the way podcasting is, it's like literally a person listening to you in that room. And so I just want to bring this back down to perspective for you as far as like what numbers we're shooting for here. We hear about the millions of downloads and all those other kinds of things, right? But even just a few people listening can be very, very powerful. And of course, over time, what we want to happen is we have our podcast grow, and now you're speaking in front of thousands of people. This is a room that's actually me right there in front of literally 1,000 people. This was at Chalene Johnson's Marketing Impact Academy, and that's 1,000 people. So if you get 1,000 downloads per episode, that's how many people are listening to your stuff, right? Yes, there's a Mandalorian helmet behind me. When I started this podcast, this was for a niche website that I created, Food Trucker. I wanted to start a podcast because I knew that even though this audience was pretty small, relatively speaking, that even just a few hundred downloads per episode would do amazing things. And it did. We actually created a few dozen episodes. And no, I don't have a food truck, but I interviewed food truck owners to understand how this industry worked. And guess what? Other food truck owners started listening and putting it into their playlist and looking forward to the next episode. Now, I've since sold this business, but even just seeing 300,000 downloads over time on this thing was absolutely incredible. And it did a lot. In fact, it provided a lot of authority for the brand Food Trucker, so much so that the brand was sold in 2020, which was pretty amazing. And the podcast went along with it, which was really cool. Now, many of you know of my podcast, Smart Passive Income, 15 or 100,000, 100, I can't even say that number. It's so big now. That many downloads per episode. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to be able to literally sit here. This is my podcasting microphone. This is where I sit and record my podcast. To be able to reach that many people, it's like going into a football stadium. In fact, 2 football stadiums at a time, which is, again, pretty intimidating if that were to happen in real life. But to do it from the comfort of my own home and to be here behind the microphone like I am today, it's just truly an honor. And it is something that has changed my life. Like I said, more business opportunities, more relationships, better communicator. So many things have happened. And as I once heard, podcasting is the best way to scale intimacy. I cannot remember who said that, but I absolutely love it. I was in the audience when I heard that, and it just clicked for me. I'm like, yes, because this right here, the earbud in the ear, right? Or the headphones on, or you're alone in your car and you turn that podcast on. It is just you as the creator and them. And that is such a wonderful opportunity to be able to provide information in that way without distraction, right? It's just a very unique kind of content. And we talked about how long people are listening at a time, and it's just wonderful. So if you're not getting into podcasting, you absolutely should. If you have a podcast, I want to remind you about how awesome it is that we can do this, right? How awesome it is. Now, what about you? Give me a shout out in the chat. What's your show going to be about? Or if you have a podcast, tell me what that is about. Your podcast goes here, and it will. We're going to give you some information today to help you make that happen. In fact, on the next slide, I'll show you exactly what we're going to cover. But hopefully you are excited. You feel the energy. I'm feeling the energy. I hope you're feeling the energy, and I hope you over there in the back are feeling the energy too. I appreciate you. But let me know what your podcast is likely going to be about. And thank you for all the congrats. By the way, I appreciate that. And I do see some great questions. I see a question from Steve here. I will answer all those questions and more at the end of the presentation today. I also have some special guests coming on who are going to help you understand a little bit more about what this opportunity is for you. Cheyenne wants to do a fiction podcast. That's amazing. William says wellness. Cynthia says building dream homes. That is amazing. I look at all the amazing niches. We have James here for running. That there are some great running podcasts. The cool thing about a podcast, too, is it provides a platform for you to connect with somebody else, right? You can invite another person in your industry and you get to not just pick their brain for 30 minutes, but literally build a relationship, which is so cool. Thank you for sharing those future podcasts of yours or existing ones. Let's go into what we're going to learn today. Number one, you're going to learn the only piece of equipment you need to sound like a pro and how to know what to podcast about so you don't waste your time. I know this is a reason why a lot of us don't start podcasts. We're worried about if this is going to be a waste of time or not, and I don't want this to be a waste of your time. Strategies I use to conduct the best podcast interviews and stand out of the crowd. The number one element all of your podcasts need to start with, or else you might lose your listeners for good. How to get heard, and specifically how to make sure you're heard on day one. This is a specialty we have at SPI, right? There's a lot of other courses and people out there who will teach you how to start a podcast. But how do you start a podcast and get listeners? That's our specialty, and we want to share that with you today. Next, secrets about the podcasting algorithms. So you know how to rank your show. I'm going to teach you exactly how Apple works, and it's, it's not as complicated as Google, in fact, which is really great. My number one ninja podcast growth hack, and actually I'll be doing a live demo using one of you as inspiration for that, and look forward to that. Next, monetization tactics other than advertising. We often think that sponsorships is the only way to go about it, but there's many more ways to monetize your show, even without a huge listenership, and I'll show you those in just a minute. And then video podcasting and how that can play a role in the growth of your show. And I don't know why I said roll that way, but it sounded kind of cool. All right, my goal today is to teach you the best information so that you can walk away and make smart decisions. And whether that's working with us or continuing on your journey yourself, that's totally fine. But I think we have to start with some myths, because I could teach you all the things about podcasting, how to get found, how to get great on the microphone, all those kinds of things. But unless you understand what's going on up here and the stories we're telling ourselves about why we can't do this or why this is hard or all those kinds of things, we have to cover those first. And then we'll get into sort of the juicy bits and the strategies and stuff. But let's go into myth number one. You have to be a great speaker, storyteller, or interviewer. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because you're behind the microphone. You're speaking into the mic. You don't have necessarily the same kind of freedom that you have editing a blog post. You're behind a microphone. That's scary. But here's the absolute truth. Podcasting will help you become a better speaker and storyteller. No, you don't need to be perfect. In fact, I waited a very long time. And I want to preface this, say, are you ready for an embarrassing photo and an embarrassing audio file as well? Great questions coming in. Save those to the end, please. But I do want to answer those for you. 458 people watching live now, which is great. Perfect. Peak viewership as I'm about to share this with you. Bam! This is a picture of me in 2008. I had just gotten laid off from my architecture job, moved back in with my parents. That was a guest room in my parents' home. And I bought some podcasting equipment because I wanted to start a podcast. In fact, it was another podcast called Internet Business Mastery that inspired me. And I said, I want to do that too. I want to pass that forward. And I bought this equipment. And here I am wearing an Australian Bondi Beach rescue shirt. And guess what? I recorded an audio file because I just wanted to hear what that sounded like. And I'm going to play it for you right now. This is the very first audio file that I ever recorded. And I made it like as if I was creating a podcast. You'll hear the music. You'll hear how it fits my personality perfectly. Here it is.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to this. I think that's so awesome that you guys are helping me out figure out all this new podcasting stuff. I'm actually just bought a whole bunch of podcasting equipment for myself because I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I figured, hey, why not do one? So, I mean, really, I really don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. So I just wanted to get familiar with all the equipment that I have right now and what it's like to post something online and hear what people think about it. So, I mean, you tell me, should I give up on podcasting now because my voice sucks so bad, or should I talk a little deeper, or I really have no idea. So again, just thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. Keep coming back to the website. I got tons of information coming up in the near future, and
Wrap it up,
let's
Pat.
make 2009 a great year for all of us. Let's make it the most profitable year we've ever had. Um, and I'll try my best to help you get there. So again, good luck with everything. Happy holidays. And this is Pat Flynn from the Smart Passive Income blog signing off. Peace.
Where is this music coming? Okay, I just have to stop that. That's so I can't. I just can't anymore. I just can't. Woo. Okay. Every time I watch and listen to that, I just am taken back to just how scared I was of all this. But I did it. I did it, and of course, my voice sounds okay because it was behind the microphone. But you could hear how timid I was. Like it was just bad. And I wanted to share that with you to hopefully bring things back to perspective because I've been doing this for nearly 15 years now, and it's always going to be a rough start. And I'm grateful that eventually I found some people to connect with, a community that can help inspire me to get started, and things have changed since then. But you might be curious, Pat. Okay, so that was December 2008. When did your first episode come out? July of 2010, a year and a half later. Because I was scared, because I was worried about what people would say about my voice, because of all those things. And since then, many more podcasts have come out, including one with my son and I that went for a season, which was great. Ask Pat, which has gone over 1,200 episodes. The podcast has allowed me to connect with people like Gary Vee, who is like one of the hardest people to connect with because he's just all over the place. And I had to edit a lot of F-bombs out of the episode, but that's okay because I was able to meet him and actually become friends with him. We're both on the board of Pencils of Promise now, which is pretty cool. And we connect and stay in touch with each other, which is really neat. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't have a podcast. The podcast has specifically attributed to growth and sales. In fact, this, which is a course sale launch from July 2017, was a result of a single podcast episode, which I'll share for you at the end of the episode or at the end of today. But yes, a single podcast episode attributed to that course growth. And then community. When people hear your voice and they see you and they feel you and they feel your emotion, they want to connect with you. And this is something that I think we understand that most of us are craving today, right? We want more community. And this is why we at SPI, we've changed our business model to provide community, but you can build your community too. And you don't need a large user base to be able to do that, right? So these are all pictures of people who have listened to, wrong button, Ask Pat or the Power Up podcast, or Smart Passive Income, and have come together. These are meetups that have happened, a church group on the lower left-hand corner that used my podcast as curriculum, which was pretty crazy. So you can become a great communicator, but you got to get going. You got to get started. And I just wanted to share that with you. Next, podcasting myth number 2, you have to podcast in a big niche to succeed. Very, very common thing. It's like, hey, Pat, like my subject is pretty small, so I don't think a podcast is worth my time. And that is incorrect. The truth of the matter is niche podcasting is the secret to growing faster. In fact, if you told me, Pat, I want to create a fitness podcast, I would say don't. That's too general. But if you are creating a running podcast, like I saw somebody mention earlier, okay, that's a little bit less general, but we could get even further. What if you had a podcast specifically for ultra marathon runners, right? Imagine while running, you can listen to the podcast. That actually would be pretty cool. But ultra marathon runners have different needs and diets and workout plans than a person who's going from their couch to 5K, right? So as you can see, this is how you then begin to build your tribe. And they hear your voice, you become the leader of the community, and you get to bring people together, which is really amazing, right? So case in point, one of our own very students, Phil Lichenberger, who created a Scanner School podcast. These are for nerds, and he'll attribute to this. I'm a nerd as well, so that's not negative. Radio nerds, right? People who like to listen to emergency lines on their handheld radio scanner and different things that you can do with that, right? He created a podcast for his people, and he has super fans now. Here in a post, he said, I'm officially over 6 months of my podcast, 24 released since this Tuesday. And he's got people who comment on every post who want to hang out, and he's held meetups since then and all those kinds of things. Here's Sophie Walker, who has a podcast called Australian Birth Stories. She literally interviews moms in Australia specifically about their birthing story, how they are in their pregnancy and how they've given birth, and all the things that new moms who are pregnant can listen to and feel a little bit better and feel a little bit more comfortable, feel a little bit more safe, understand what's going on. She now has hit #1 in the charts for kids and family in Australia. And she's got, I mean, perhaps you've listened to the episode with her on SPI. She's got millions of downloads, tens of thousands of dollars coming in sponsorships. And people actually, organizations now require, health organizations require their employees to listen to her podcast now for, what is it called? Like additional credits or whatever it was, continuing education. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then we have Maria from Growing Joy. She's one of our SPI Pro members who started a podcast about plants. And as a result of that, she now has a book called Growing Joy and was able to get a publisher as a result of her podcast. So really, really amazing things that have happened since just getting started. There's a theme here. Just get started. But do it the right way with our information. Podcasting myth #3, the final one, is you can't make money until you get a big listenership. This is a big one. It's like, okay, if you talk to companies who do podcast advertising and sponsorships, they're going to say, well, you got to have at least 50,000 downloads per episode or 25,000 downloads per episode after 6 months after its release. And that's how they will understand what the CPMs are, the cost per 1,000 downloads. But what if you have a small audience? Well, there's a lot of different ways to monetize, and we'll share those with you at the end. However, you can still do sponsorships and advertising with a small amount. Here's why. The brand loyalty that you build with your audience, even though it might be smaller, it is tight. And that is worth something. That is valuable. And companies know this. This is why ad dollars are being spent in the world of podcasting. And it's gone through ups and downs, but it continues to remain. And the beauty is companies know that your word matters to your audience, and they want to get in front of that. Now, don't say yes to every opportunity, but if it's a brand that you know and you care about and you use, then it's a win for all situations, right? Case in point, this was from Wojciech, which is a person from Poland who I will be interviewing for the podcast very soon. But he has a podcast called The Fire Science Show. And look at this headline. Pat, I've made it. Today I signed a milestone sponsor deal for my show. I wanted to share that I've made it. I just signed I'm not going to say the number, yearly sponsorship deal for my podcast. And here's the kicker. With just a little over 50,000 total downloads and 600 downloads per episode. So the reason why I want to bring him on the podcast is because he's a perfect example of somebody who has a very small show, but is still able to make quite a good living off of that, which is really amazing, right? So yes, you can do well. You just got to get started. So we're about to get into the brass tacks now, if you will. I don't know if that's the right term. We're about to get into the thick of it. So if you're ready to get started, say, let's do this, Pat, because I needed to get you over those stories you're telling yourself and those myths that you're telling yourself about why you can't do this or why this isn't going to work. It can, but it's up to you. And now I'm going to give you the direction that you need to go into. So type in, let's do this, and or let's do this, Pat, and we will get started. First of all, thank you again for taking time out of your day today to hang out with me. This is a very exciting day for us at SPI. We are launching the Power Up Podcasting 3.0 course. We have an accelerator happening next week that kicks off, which is where you can join other students and get instruction along the way. We actually changed our business model to not offer a one-off course where you have to go at it alone. We are now changing the business model to what we call community-powered courses, which is really amazing. Let's do this, Pat. Let's go. I love it. I love to see the energy. So let's get started. All right. How to sound like a pro. Well, obviously, you need a microphone. And I'll share with you some of the mics I recommend to get started that don't break the bank. But the truth is this. You can have the best content in the world. Your interviews are great, and the information that you're sharing is amazing. But if your audio quality is bad, nobody will listen. And I have arguments with people about this, in fact. But it's true. It's actually more important than video, right? You will watch a crappy video as long as you understand what's going on and the audio is okay, right? But, we've seen 480p quality videos, but we still watch and listen. I mean, that's what we did back in the day, and we were fine. But if you download an audio file and it's crackly and it's terrible and the audio quality is not good, or you sound like you're in a tin can or something, then people are going to move on. There's a level of standard now of quality in the world of podcasting, and you have to have decent audio, right? That's just, I think, the norm and the obvious thing. So here's some microphones. Don't worry about my beard. It's just in the closet. These are the microphones that you could start out with. I actually would recommend the two on the left, the Audio Technica or the Samson Q2U. So these two microphones here, the Audio Technica ATR 2100X and the Samson Q2U, are amazing, and here's why. First of all, I've had these for years, and they still last. The Audio Technica and the Samson Q2U, they're basically the same microphone, but they have the ability to plug in via USB, which is amazing because you can just plug and play and go, right? And that's it. They do have the ability to grow with you as well. If you get a sort of soundboard or something like that, they do have an XLR connection on the back as well. You can see those 3 prongs back there. It can grow with you, and these sound great. In fact, most of the students in our courses have these and have run with them and have done really well. So again, I want to make this decision easy for you. Yes, you can get a Heil PR40 or the Joe Rogan Shure SM7B or all these other things, which do help. But I want to lower the barrier to entry for you and make it easy, and this is what most people start with. Now, again, one thing to record a podcast and talking to the mic, but you have to record that somehow, right? So let's talk about software. These are the two that are so easy to begin with. Many podcasters, especially pro-level podcasters, will be like, Pat, really? Why don't you get Adobe Audition? Yeah, Adobe Audition is great, but I'm here to help you get started fast. In GarageBand, and we have lessons on this, and in fact, there's a lesson on YouTube that's free that you can watch on it as well from me. GarageBand is the way to go. Audacity, if you don't have a Mac, is also a free tool that you can use that is very simple to use once you know the hang of it, and you can go from there. Now, recording audio from an interview is another thing, and we do have a lot of software for that nowadays, everything from Squadcast, which is my top recommendation, over to Riverside, over to Zencaster, Zoom. It can work for you if you want. That's a great low-budget way since you probably already have Zoom to record a podcast, but the audio is a little bit compressed. So I'd recommend something like squadcast.fm to record your interviews, but that's up to you, and we're not going to get into the details and the weeds of those softwares right now, but that software exists, and it makes it sound great, right? So let's talk about content. What do you actually record about? How do you create compelling content? Well, there's a number of different starting points that I like to recommend for you. Sarah said I started with Audacity. The awesome Dreb says using Audacity. Nice. Welcome to the 500 people in the room right now, by the way. Thank you so much. So podcasts about what's already proven, right? You can experiment down the road, but to start out with, you can go to your website or you can go to other podcasts and see what topics people are talking about. You don't want to copy them, obviously, but it's very hard to quote unquote copy if you have a podcast because it's your voice. You're literally speaking to the microphone. What's your take on it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? All those kinds of things. Take things that you know are already working somewhere else and put you into it, right? Blog, website analytics is super underutilized in podcasts because you are able to see how much traffic certain things are getting. Okay, let's create a podcast episode about that and then link to it in that post to get more people to your podcast. Questions people are asking. You probably have a bucket of questions that you know you can answer questions for and then offer story and examples. Stories that relate to your audience, for sure. This is the number one thing about podcasts, relatability, right? Anybody can find information anywhere about anything right now, but it's the way that you present that information and the stories that you tell that relate to the listener that are going to make that connection, right? When you can bring out emotion in that way, it's a person who's now following you. They're not just there for the content, but they're following you, and there's so much that you can do with that. Interviews with guests. You don't have to have an interview show, but I highly recommend it because you get to connect with other people. And I know some people who take our course and start a podcast because they literally just want to connect with other people. They don't even care how many listeners they get. And it's so much easier to ask somebody to come on your podcast than to just prick their brain for 30 minutes and do nothing with it, right? So another reason why podcasting is great. But if you do interviews, these are some tips that might help you. The interview starts before it happens. And that means you want to make a person feel comfortable when they come in, right? The setup, the way that you have been passing emails back and forth, the language that you use and how you connected with them, sending a message on social media to just look forward to the next interview with you tomorrow. All those kinds of things matter because when it comes to an interview, the more comfortable a person is, the more likely it is that it's just going to be a fun conversation, or the deeper that you can go with questions and the more comfortable a person will be to answer those questions, which is key. And again, many of these people who appear on podcasts appear on many different podcasts. The same questions asked in every single podcast is okay, but it's the gold that lies within, deeper. You got to ask questions to go deeper. So here's some more tips. Number one, ask open-ended questions. It's the difference between what's your favorite color, or what is it about the color blue that makes you love it so much? Oh, so good, right? A podcast about colors. Call it the Colorful Podcast. I don't know. Colorcast. Colorcast. There we go. So ask open-ended questions. You're going to get better answers. Hunt for the story. This is an amazing tip that I've heard many, many times, but I cannot reiterate it enough. Get the story. You tell stories, but you want to get the stories too. So how do you do that? So when you are in an interview with somebody, imagine you're interviewing like a person in your space. Prompt them by saying, tell me about a time when blank, right? Tell me about a time when you ran a fundraiser, but it didn't go according to plan. Tell me about a time when you published a video and you thought it was going to do really well, but it didn't. Why do you think that happened? Tell me about a time. The best thing that you can offer for your listeners, because then your job after that is to just sit back and listen, right? Then you listen. When a person is listening to your show, they want to hear the guest more than they hear you. They can hear you at any moment in time. And maybe you do have a mix of solo episodes and interview episodes like I do. But hunt for the story. Tell me about a time when blank. I see a lot of great questions, by the way. Hold them to the end. I will definitely offer some time for questions to be answered at the end. And of course, a lot of these questions, I'm like, oh, that's lesson 3 in module 2 of our course, which is really funny. But yeah. Listen, and then be genuinely curious. This is by far what helped me the most when I was just in the beginning days of my interviewing, was just kind of like reading off questions. And that's not great because anybody could be the host at that point. But it's the why questions that happen after. When we're kids and we're like, or if you have kids, you know that like kids ask why all the time. It's because they're curious. They want to know the answer. And then it gets kind of annoying. But we unfortunately don't bring that back when we're interviewing. We want to be curious. We want to be not annoying, but we want to dig deeper. So asking why, right? Asking, well, how did you feel when that happened? Get curious. And when you're curious, that'll guide your questions. Seriously. And it becomes just much more natural, much more organic, much more enjoyable to listen to versus, all right, question number 1. How did you get started in your online business? Question number 2. What was the biggest mistake that you have ever made? Cool. All right. Question number 3. No, please don't do that, right? Don't do that. just don't. All right. What's up, misunderstood? Wow, that's a cool username. Misunderstood. Not misunderstood. All right. Moving on. Every episode needs to start with a hook. I'm going to give you some examples in our video podcasting section about some hooks that you can see in real time, but a hook is really important, right? You need, I heard a quote the other day. It's like, content without a hook is just like throwing food in the water, like without. Anyway, I'm butchering this quote, so don't quote me on that. But every episode should start with a hook, meaning you need to entice people. You need to get people to understand why they should. And here's my magic moment, right? I want you to imagine your listener has a phone. Most people are listening to podcasts on a phone. They're about to go on a drive. They're about to go on a walk. They're about to walk their dog. They're about to go on a workout or something. They're looking for content to play while they do that. What is going to be when they press play on your episode, the moment that makes them go, yep, I'm listening to that one. I'm putting that in my pocket, putting the earbuds in. What's that magic moment? You need to have something in the beginning that convinces that listener to go, that's the episode. That's the episode right there. That's the one I want, right? So, very important. You want to do that, right? So think about a hook. You can bring a part in the middle that was kind of enticing in forward. We do that on the SPI podcast. You can pitch it in the beginning. Hey, if you are doing Facebook advertising, Facebook just made a bunch of changes. And if you don't know what these are, you're going to literally be throwing money down the toilet. So stick around because I'm going to give you 5 things to help you with your Facebook advertising in 2023 as we roll into 2024. It could just be that, right? Too many podcasts take advantage of the fact that it is a very casual way of sort of doing content. and they spend 5 minutes talking about breakfast before they get into the meat of the content. We live in a day and age now where you can't do that anymore, both on YouTube, or especially on YouTube, but even now on a podcast, right? All right, let's get heard, right? Let's get heard. So how do we get listeners even on day one? Now, if you have a list or if you have a following already, tell people that you are starting a podcast soon, that it's coming. Tease it, right? You want people to get involved. When people are involved, they are invested. Let me say that one more time. When people are involved, they are invested. So get them involved as you're creating it. Hey, guys, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. Here are 3 names of the podcast I'm thinking of. Which ones do you think that I should do? Or what is your favorite one? Or, hey, guys, who do you think I should have as a guest on the podcast? Reply and let me know. And now you're getting tags, and now you're starting relationships in that way, which is really cool, right? Hey, guys, I just recorded the first episode. It was amazing. I can't wait to share it with you. Share along the way, right? Share along the way. Very important. You want to launch it like it's an event. This is the secret here, because it is. It should be event-like when it comes out, right? Now I want to hear the 5 Facebook things. Practice, right? Like I said, podcasting will help you become a better communicator. And these things like hooks and whatnot, just like YouTube thumbnails, the more you do them, the better you get, right? And so you got to get started. Pick a date and then invite the party, right? This is a really cool thing to do. You have a launch date and then you invite the party. Very important. If you imagine you are a musician, right? Very similar. You're behind a microphone. Hey, I don't know what song that was. Was that Outkast? I'm not sure. Sorry. Don't know where that was going. Imagine you're a musician. If you know that you have a concert that you're playing, you're going to let people know about it ahead of time. Imagine you had a concert, but you didn't tell people the date, or you didn't give people notice about when that was going to happen. It would not work, right? So pick a date for the event and let people know about it, right? Invite the party. Then you get the venue ready. This is all the setup and all the sort of mechanical things. The beauty of podcasting is that you kind of have to just set most of the things up once, and then you'll never have to touch it again. Then you just come out with episodes. Everything else runs automatically, right? Next, you want to tease what's coming, like I said, and then you launch. Do not make the same mistake that I did. The mistake that I made when it came to podcasting is this. I launched with just 1 episode. Just 1. Ugh. We're spending a lot of time and effort to get people to listen to our podcast, which is not an easy thing, right? If you have a loyal following, it's a lot easier, obviously. But if you have enticing content and all these kinds of things, these help push people toward hitting play. Once they hit play, that's when they're in. And if you only have 1 episode to play at the start, you've missed that opportunity. Imagine you're a musician and you get all this set up for a concert and you play 1 song and then you leave. They're in the stands. They're sitting there. They want more. They've gotten there. They drove. They parked the valet. Now they're there, and you only gave them 1 song? What a letdown. So my strategy is this, and this has worked really well over the years for people in my course, which is launch with 3 episodes. Episode 1, maybe it's just the introduction, and you're getting people familiar with what you have to offer. Episode 2 is about, your weight training program, and episode 3 is your nutrition thing, right? And now a person who comes in who's like, hey, you know what? I'm not interested in weight training, but I am interested in nutrition. I'm going to listen to episode 3 first. Or maybe it's vice versa. A person wants the weightlifting thing. They're going to listen to episode 2. And then they're like, wow, this is great. And it connects with episode 3. So I'm going to listen to that next. And now I like this person. So I'm going to listen to episode 1 now. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 7. 7. If you know where that came from, bonus points for you. Let me know in the chat if you know where that little Easter egg came from. The 7 thing. Okay. Anyway. Next, you have to realize that podcasting is visual, right? Yes, of course, with video podcasting it is, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But it is visual because you have one thing, your podcast artwork. And there on the lower left-hand side is Ask Pat. And it is a very visual thing. This is one of the first things that people will see, obviously. More, though, than the actual description. They have to click through to see the description. So here are some really good pieces of artwork. There we go. These are my people. That's what I'm talking about. Here's some artwork from some of our fellow students. Letterpress Digest. I'm not a huge fan of the cursive, but I understand that because everything else is so blocky in the background. OMG Books with Williams, great. Board Gaming with English. They teach English through board games on their podcast. Michael Pound, one of our success stories. Heal Better Fast. Just really, I love the New 30 podcast one. what I would recommend is looking at your competition, if you will, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't even call it competition, like your comrades in your podcasting space, to see what they have and what works for them. And you can either choose to do something similar that's familiar, or you can completely go the opposite route. But it's very important for you to kind of open up Canva or open up Photoshop with what you have designed and put it next to the others so you can see if it blends in or not. Very, very important. All right, let's keep rolling here. By the way, quick check. Energy check. We all doing good? Thumbs up emoji if you're feeling good. I plead the fifth, says Andrew. Let me know if the energy is good. I'm feeling it today. I'm actually on a really good high right now from the 500 people that are in the chat right now. This is really great. I'm so happy that I get to pass forward this information to you. Speaking of passing forward, let's pass forward the Apple Podcast rankings. Now, this isn't going to be very scientific in terms of, 40% of it is this and 80% of it is that. Wait, that's 120%. This is basically how it works. If you get a large number of subscribers, plus a lot of downloads and ratings and reviews all compacted within a short period of time, you're going to rank higher. You can rank higher than long-lasting podcasts from famous people if you push everything into this little contained space, right? This is why a launch is really important, having a launch plan, providing hype for it, getting people excited, asking people to leave an honest review and rating. The best way to do that is to, when people say, Pat, I really enjoyed your show, thank you, send them a DM and say, hey, thank you for saying that. By the way, if you have a chance, leave a review. It's really helpful. Doing it one by one like that in the beginning is very, very smart. It works way better than just putting it in your podcast because everybody hears it all the time, right? So a personalized ask goes very, very well. I just want to pass that forward to you. So this is why this works really well. It's very similar to Amazon book rankings. It's just velocity, right? And then over time, it's going to trickle down and you're going to lose those rankings, and that's okay. And then over time, some of those people who have found you are now going to bring it and spread the word. And word of mouth is very important in podcasting. People talk about podcasts at the water cooler, at the office, with their friends and family, send emails to each other. Did you listen to this episode? That growth is very important, although it's very hard to track. Great content. Obviously, it's going to help. So velocity, getting a lot of things happening in a short period of time. And even if you've already launched a podcast, this strategy still works. Let's say you go, 25 episodes down the road, you feel like you've hit a plateau. Okay, next week, let's launch a double banger week where 2 podcast episodes come out next week and make them all about this and make it a big deal and promote it and lead up to it. You're going to see that velocity again. You're going to see your rankings climb, your download numbers go up. And that's how you do it, right? Good. Sorry you have a cold, Sarah. Passing on good vibes to you. All right. Let's talk about growth, not from the launch, but after you launch. How might you grow your podcast from there? There's a lot of debate, a lot of strategies. There's honestly many different ways to do this, but I have a favorite way that I want to share with you, one that will hopefully blow your mind like it does with other people who I share that with. And I know that's a tall order here, but it works, and I'm going to demo it with some of you. So to help me out, before I present to you what this is, I'd love for you to share me what your niche is in the chat. So spam your niche. Thank you to the mods here in Team SPI. I saw Jillian, and who else was here? Ashley. I think Sandy was in the chat as well, keeping the house nice and tidy for us. But okay, spam your niche, and I'll share with you what this is. My number one ninja podcast growth hack is forums and groups. Yay. You might be like, Pat, that's not very exciting. That did not blow my mind. No, it's not supposed to yet. But when I demo this for you, it will. So forums and groups, what do I mean by that? So Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, forums specific to your niche. So you're saying, Pat, just go in there and tell them I have a podcast and spam? That's not going to work. Of course that doesn't work. We all know that doesn't work because we've been on the receiving end of that before, and it doesn't feel good. In fact, like, get out of here. You're just coming in here and spamming your podcast. No, we don't want that. We don't want that. So how do we go about doing this? Well, I'm going to demo this for you, and that should be self-explanatory. So I'm going to check the chat real quick and pick a niche, and we're going to do this together. We're actually going to go into Facebook and look for a group and do the thing. I'm not going to press enter or communicate with anybody, so don't worry. And hopefully we can have some fun while we do this. So let's see. We got gardening, Petunia's Garden. It was the first one I saw. It doesn't matter who this is because you'll see it actually demoed live. So let's go to the computer. We are on Facebook right now, as you can see, and I'm in the groups area. So from here, I'm going to type gardening. So Petunia, I'm going to call you Petunia. I don't know if that's your name, but Petunia, that is your name for now. Gardening. I'm in the groups area. I literally just did a search. Look at that. Gardening in Southern California. 25,000 members. Wouldn't it be amazing if I could get my podcast in front of 25,000 members? Gardening for beginners. 226,000 members. Gardening hints and tips. Oh my gosh. 1 million members. I've never seen a 1 million member group. That is crazy. In fact, it might take a little longer to do it with a larger group, but let's say the small one, gardening in Southern California. Maybe that is, in fact, my niche, right? It's private. Only members can see, but guess what you can see? Remember, I didn't join this group yet. I'm scrolling down and I see Enrico is an admin. Kim and 3 other members are moderators. So where's Enrico at? Is this Enrico? What's up, Enrico? Nice to meet you. Let's send a message to Enrico. Again, I'm not going to hit enter. But let me tap into Petunia right now, and you'll hear the message that I'm about to share. Hey, Enrico. Petunia here from the Petunia's Garden podcast. I would love to have your number 1 tip for brand new gardeners on my podcast. In fact, I would love to honor you and share your voice on this podcast. And we're going to make it very easy. I'm just going to send you a link, and you're going to hit record. And if you wanted to drop in your tip, I'll pop it in the podcast for you and give a shout out to your SoCal Facebook group. That's it. Not like, what are the chances that a person who sees this message, not all of them are going to get through, so you're going to want to do this with a few. What are the chances that when they see this message and they see how easy this is, because all you have to do is go to, I'm going to pop this up here right now. This is one of my favorite tools, speakpipe.com. Receive voice messages from your podcast listeners. Well, also guess who you want to feature on your show in this way, right? That was a little creepy. Yeah, I'm not going to be creepy. Receive voice messages from your podcast. So what happens is if you go to speakpipe.com/ I think it's Pat, you'll see what this is like on the receiving end. Yes, so send a voice message to Pat. Hit record, you send a message, and what happens to that on your end? Well, you get an MP3 file that you can then drop into a podcast. Let's say you reach out to 10 different groups and you feature 10 different admins and their groups and their tips. And you have a very, very popular, very useful episode called Top 10 Tips from 10 Master Gardeners. And then you start the episode by you saying, here's what happened. And then you play Enrico's. And then you come back and you say, that was a great tip. I follow that too. And here's my recommendation on that. Okay, let's go to Janice's from this group. And then you play Janice's voicemail. Then you go to Ross. Then you go to Rachel. Then you go to Chandler. Then you go to Monica. Right? You get them all in there. 10. Maybe even 5. Right? So here's what happens after that. You publish that episode and you go to those people and you say, hey, thank you so much. You were tip number 5, Monica. Enrico, you were tip number 1. Thank you so much for this. Without even asking what is going to happen. Tell me, chat, what are the chances that because you've featured that community owner, again, it's not just Facebook, LinkedIn, any forum, these people don't often get recognition for what they do. They put a lot of hard work into managing these groups, and now they're getting some love. Now you've given them a platform to say something. And guess what? Most of them will share that episode within their group. So you've now been able to get your podcast linked to in these groups by the group owner. Are you getting this? This is how marketing should be done, where everybody wins. I absolutely love this, right? Yes, they will share it. Absolutely. Why? Because you've given them a platform to express themselves, to share something. You've given them a way to look good in front of their people. And by golly, we're all human, and we humans, we want to look good in front of other people. And you've done that, right? Guess what? Some of our students are using just this strategy alone and are killing it. It's one of the growth strategies that we have inside of the course. But I wanted to share that with you just to show you the quality of that and hopefully get you excited. This is so applicable to my podcast. Amazing. Love it. Brilliant way. It's funny because it's like these things already existed, right? We've always seen groups, we've always seen these kinds of things. But it's just sometimes it takes somebody who figures it out to pass it forward, and this is a big one. And again, I hope you take advantage of the accelerator that's happening next week where we can help you build your podcast together and you'll be with other students. But we're not done yet. I'm glad you enjoyed that. And Petunia, that one's for you. And obviously, very easy to apply to your own if you are not Petunia. Truly great idea. Playing the ego game is strong. Gonzo, dude, this is why I've agreed to be on your show. We'll figure that out later, man. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Okay, let's keep going here because I've given you a good one. All right. Let's talk about what I know a lot of us are curious about, money. A podcast can help you generate more revenue. Having a podcast alone, unlike YouTube, like having a YouTube channel, obviously with AdSense in there and Google Ads put on your videos, like it doesn't work like that. Not yet, at least. I know there's some softwares that are trying to change things, but in the world of YouTube, you can just have a video. You don't even have to charge your audience anything, and you can get sponsorship dollars. It doesn't work that way with podcasting. There's a lot of different ways to monetize your podcast, the most common being sponsorships. And that is, we have an entire workshop dedicated to that, yes, you also get access to inside of the All Access Pass. But we're not going to talk about that today because it takes a while to get to that point where you can entice some sponsors. Although that being said, I showed you that example from earlier of somebody who gets only 600 downloads per episode and is making, again, I can't share the revenue, but quite a bit of money from a very small audience in that space, the Fire Science Show, if you want to check that out. But you can do these instead. Get new students and customers for your courses, obviously. Affiliate marketing, which is where you promote and recommend other people's products. I mean, whether you are a Pokemon creator and you're an affiliate for Vault X binders, or you are a entrepreneur like myself who promotes ConvertKit, and anything in between, if you're using these products, you might as well share them. And you get a kickback from that company. We have an entire course on affiliate marketing as well that you get access to in the All Access Pass. But I want you to focus on podcasting first. You can sell into events. Actually, podcasts are an amazing way to sell events. Why? Because people are getting comfortable with who's putting on the event. They're getting a little bit more comfortable with what the event's going to be like. Maybe you're giving them a little bit of behind the scenes. Maybe you are interviewing people who are going to be speakers at this event. And now you're getting people to feel like they're in a preview. And now they're like, I want to meet them. Well, you can't. Just come to the event. Just come to the event. My buddy Chris Ducker, shout out to him, one of my best friends. He started a podcast specifically to promote his book in the same way. And he created an event out of the book launch, but used the podcast to promote the book and then stopped it. Like he knew that was going to be 30 episodes and that's it, which I think was pretty smart. I was kind of like, oh, a podcast only does well if you keep going with it. But guess what? 5 years later, that's still getting downloads and still pushing his book, which is crazy. And then Patreon is another way, a very popular way, in fact, now that you can generate revenue from your podcast. If you have fans, they can support you with a dollar amount every single month for something else in exchange. Sometimes it's just a thank you for like $1 or $2 a month. Sometimes it's if you pay $5 a month, for example, you get access to a monthly newsletter or a call. Sometimes people go upwards to $100 a month, but every month you get a private call with me, and there's only 10 of those available or something like that. A lot of people use that to also manage their business and their growth in their bottom line as well. So Patreon can be a great way to do it. There's a lot of podcasters who are making 5-6 figures a year without ever asking their audience to buy anything. They're just getting support. It's like a fancy tip jar, but you get something in exchange, which is really nice. So Patreon can be a great model too. So I want to share with you the most profitable podcast that I've ever published. This was episode 275, Real Stories and Results from 3 Brand New Podcasters. So here is the story behind this podcast. This was in 2017, and we were launching the 1.0 version of the course that I'm going to tell you about a little bit later, Power of Podcasting, right? So we just went through a beta group A beta group is people who get access to your course before you sell it publicly. It's just like an invite only thing, or you sell it for just a few people. And then they go in there and they do it and they get the results, and they might break some things and you fix them and all that kind of stuff. You do that beforehand. We had about 50 or 60 students go through Power Up Podcasting before we were going to release it public. And I invited 3 of those people who had successfully launched their podcast months before to come on the show and talk about it. When it comes to marketing, the best way to market your product is for you not to talk about it, but for somebody else to talk about it, especially one of your students or customers, right? So that's the story behind this episode here. I invited these podcasters, Dr. B, who created the Harness Your ADHD Power, Dr. Shannon Irvin from Epic Success Podcast, and then Rob and Carrie from Disney Travel Secrets. And they each had their own brands. Actually, Dr. B was starting from scratch. She had an amazing story because she's over 60 years old. And there's a reason why I selected each of those people out of the lot. Dr. B is over 60 years old. She was definitely afraid of technology, right? She was like, I don't even know necessarily how to like log into things sometimes. And I was like, it would be amazing if she created a podcast and she could share her story of getting over that fear of tech. And it's like, if Dr. B can do it, then any of you who are worried about technology, you don't have to worry about it. It's not as hard as you think, right? So that's why I pulled her story. And she told this amazing story of how she created her podcast to help people living through or living with ADHD. And she puts up a pin on a map behind her computer every time she gets a new country that she finds a listener in. And she was at 33 countries by the time I interviewed her. And she talked about that on her own. And she couldn't stop talking about Power Up Podcasting, right? That's the thing. It was a beautiful testimonial that was unprompted. I didn't invite her or any of these other people on to go, hey, tell me why Power Up Podcasting was awesome. That's not how you want to do it. I invited them on and asked, what was hard about starting a podcast for you? And where is life now that you've started one? And without even asking, you're going to get praise for it. You're going to get people to talk about you. You're going to get people to talk about your program. And this one episode alone accounted for over $150,000 in sales. This is the one thing I think more podcasters, existing podcasters, need to do. You need to bring your own students onto your show and interview them about the before and after. Again, that transformation is key in selling anything. The before, where they're at, how it's relatable, and then the after. All right? The before and the after. All right. Next, let's talk about video podcasting. And I actually have some examples to share with you. This is a very popular topic nowadays, and it has changed over time because video podcasting is now pretty much synonymous with turning on the cameras and putting your podcast on YouTube. YouTube, in fact, has recently let us create a podcast playlist and actually have our podcasts up as a podcast on YouTube. Many people were doing podcasts on YouTube prior to this change, like Joe Rogan and many others. However, now we can actually select podcasts as a playlist, and it actually registers as a podcast. It's findable as a podcast on the YouTube platform and does get put into the YouTube Music app. You are findable there as well, which is pretty interesting. So I want to share with you a few examples of podcasts that are video podcasts because they each have sort of different styles. Like we all know the Joe Rogan one, and he invites celebrities on, and those are very watchable and very viral. And he takes clips of those, and that's a very smart thing to do as well, to put on YouTube clips about one particular topic or something interesting, and then you can share those on social media too. That is a strategy that can work, but I will preface all this by saying starting a video podcast on top of your audio podcast is like doing another separate thing. It is adding a lot more work. There's a video now. There's YouTube and understanding titles and thumbnails and all those kinds of things. It is an additional thing that can help you grow your audio podcast or your podcast in general. You will be able to reach more people on YouTube than you could with a podcast alone. It does help amplify reach, but it is like another thing. So I would, if I were most people, I would probably say audio podcast first. Turn on the cameras if they're easy to turn on, but don't worry about them so much. Nail the audio podcast, get that rolling, so then you can use that extra time once you start to optimize things to put into video podcasts, right? But let's show you some examples. So one of my favorite video podcasts, actually, no, this is, who is this? Yes, this is Ramit. Ramit does a very good job of taking what is probably the way that most of us are going to record video podcasts, which is Ramit sitting in his home recording his video. He's recording on Zoom or some other platform like Squadcast, and he's putting them together in a video on YouTube. That is the I Will Teach You to Be Rich podcast. And just Ramit, if you're out there, congrats on your success, man. And congrats on your Netflix channel or your Netflix series, which came out, which is really cool. But I'm going to move me over here to the right-hand side to cover that ad or whatever. And I'm going to play this for you. And I want you to hear how he hooks people and also look at how the video is structured, right? So here we go.
There's no quality of life. We're house poor. It'd be nice to have like some type of a life again.
Was there any concern about the two of you buying a house not being married?
I felt that marriage was going to come, and that's also why I bought the house, because I envisioned we would be getting married. We'd probably...
Anyway, that's just the first, how many seconds? 20 seconds, and already I'm intrigued, right? So I'm going to play that one more time for you because I want you to notice the video. Their quality, the guests, aren't super great, right? Here they are again. They're not super great. But the story that's being told here makes you want to go, what happened? Wait, you got a house and you're not married? Did you break up? What's going on here, right? So let's go back to the beginning, and you'll see, actually, he does show his artwork for like literally a second. That's all you need, if that. He gets right into it.
There's no quality of life. We're house poor. It'd be nice to have like some type of a life again.
Was there any concern about the two of you buying a house?
I love this setup. Ramit does a really good job of making it interesting. As you can see, the camera moved like 2 or 3 times. It went to her full screen, then now this screen. Beautiful. Really, really well done, Ramit. And it doesn't take that long, relatively speaking, compared to other podcasts like one I'm about to show you. Pow Music, I'm using Ecamm Live. It's beautiful. Shout out to Ecamm for allowing me to stream this and do all this stuff at the same time. But yeah, it's real like a documentary. He adds some music in there that actually was not in the actual podcast. But also, the hook is great. The hook is great. Video quality is not the best, but it works. And especially with the interview format, the different screens, I really, really like that. All right, here is an interview with Ali Abdal, a good friend of mine, fellow YouTuber, on the Colin and Samir podcast. Now, this takes the level of production up one, right? Notice how many different jump cuts and changes and other things are there that, and there might even be text on the screen. And also, again, the hook that comes along with it. These two examples, Ramit and then Colin and Samir, are bringing parts from the middle of the episode and bringing them forward, but then also using a lot of visuals to keep you compelled.
That advice will change the way that we operate.
We do stuff that I really don't think most podcasts do.
Can you talk a bit about pricing strategy?
I've turned away probably tens of millions of dollars.
What turned you into that person?
Complete implosion on every level. I think a lot of people end up in that situation. I know for a fact a lot of YouTubers do.
What you just said is an incredibly important thing to say.
Man, that was energizing.
So, I mean, it's kind of a tease, right? I mean, it is. That's what it is. When Samir says that what you just said is going to change everything or whatever he said there, right? It's like, oh, man, I guess I'm going to watch this. So really, really great examples there. And of course, the level of production is much better. They literally built a studio for this purpose. There's multiple camera angles. There's zoom ins, zoom outs. Perfect audio. Tim Ferriss is in the house, not Ali. But there is another interview with Ali, which is really great as well on their show. But this is where the level of cost starts to go way up, right? With this level. But this is where a lot of people are going now, which is kind of awesome and also scary at the same time. I think baseline doing Ramit does makes the most sense. I think a lot of us who are getting into video podcasting are just like, okay, well, I'm just going to turn on the camera and I'm just going to publish that as is. You got to do some doctoring on it. You got to produce it a little bit. And that's what's going to make it maybe a little bit harder to do right off the bat. However, there's a lot of people who do go that route, and it works for them. Sometimes it might take time. All right, last example here. This is a unique one. So this one comes from Rob over at Tesla Daily. This is a daily podcast that I listen to, and in fact, I listen to it on YouTube. The nice thing about YouTube is once people listen to your show, they get fed like the other ones a little bit better than they do on Apple. I still am a primary audio-based podcast. Rob has an audio-based podcast too, but you never see his face on these podcasts. It is literally taking the audio that he does every single day and putting B-roll behind it, right? B-roll behind it. Yeah, Autopod is a wonderful tool that kind of does all that automatically, which is wild, Kevin. The rabbit hole is deep. But let me play this audio podcast on video in the way that Rob from Tesla Daily does it.
Hey everybody, Rob Mauer here. Welcome back to Tesla Daily. Today we've got a lot to go through, including some possible new details on Tesla's robo-taxi vehicle concept. We've also got a note from Adam Jonas, a really nice day, of course, for the stock, and a few other things as well. So taking a quick look at the stock, Tesla today up 10.1%, closing at $273.58. The NASDAQ, nice day, only up 1.1%.
So it's just an audio show. It's just as useful when I'm listening to it. He doesn't ever really say, oh, look at this thing. But when you're watching this, you can see how valuable it is to see the visuals to go along with it, especially with like the stock and all that kind of stuff. You got to be careful with B-roll. Number one, not all videos on the internet you're allowed to sort of just use as B-roll, right? You want to use royalty-free. Tesla, thankfully, for Rob, is very, very open to this. And although they could sort of lock down, they don't, because they know that that's how they grow. And they actually recognize Rob as a creator in the space, which is really cool. Leora, just pre-recorded stock footage, and you can just buy that relates to the content. Buy what relates to the content, says Pow Music. Thanks for that that resource. I gave you a resource. You gave us a resource. That's great. I love that. Storyboard, I think, is another one. Motion Array is another one. They all have these B-rolls that if you subscribe to them, you can kind of just download them and use them. And you want to use what's relevant. And that helps. That helps. Now, a happy medium is to maybe start your show as a video podcast with some visuals and B-roll and text. And then I would say after the first minute, you don't need as much of that. In fact, you can just have it be face to camera again, or the side-by-side sort of Zoom situation, because you've hooked people in. Again, you want that magic moment where a person's putting their phone in their pocket and they're good to go, right? So there's a lot of other tips like that for video podcasting. I just wanted to give you some examples. It is something worth paying attention to. I would recommend starting with audio first, getting that going, understanding that, getting to become a better communicator, and then you can add that video component later. But I'm not going to stop you if you want to try video. And in fact, if you do want to do that, in our course, Power Up Podcasting 3.0, there is now a video podcasting module that has just been added. Envato Elements, thank you, Claudius. Appreciate you. Appreciate the chat as well for chiming in and helping out as well. So to bring this all back, I want to ask, where am I? I'm over here. So I asked on Twitter a long time ago, podcasters, what's the best thing that has happened to you as a result of starting your podcast? And the results were pretty interesting. And for those of you who are in the chat, if you want to share to the chat here as well, you can. But here's some responses I got. Speaking of running podcasts, here's one from Jason Fitzgerald, who says, deeper connection with audience, hand down. And that is definitely the number one thing with podcasting over any other platform by far. You really go deep with your audience. They really feel like you're talking to them, because you are. It's very intimate. No other medium puts you in their ear when they're driving, running, etc. David says, I got the chance to meet amazing people, real industry leaders who I would have never met otherwise, which is, again, I met Gary Vee, Tim Ferriss, and many other people who are now people I consider friends. Some of those people have become best friends as a result of this. Chris Ducker. Christy says, being able to reach a larger audience and meeting amazing guests. Love a good collaboration. Podcasting is an easy way to collab for sure, especially audio only. Very simple, low friction. Caroline says, getting a fresh stream of amazing clients. Yes. Having people listen to you and then go, I want to work with you, is a very common thing, right? Tools of the Podcast Trade says, meet people from all over the world. Amazing. Pat, are you doing SPI as a video podcast? No, not currently. Not currently, because our focus is actually on building our community. We have the resources to do it, but we're putting all those resources into things like Power of Podcasting and to help teach. The audio podcast is doing its job. Matt says, I've become a better, more confident speaker, noticeably less filler speech. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you for saying that. You didn't have to say that. I'll pay you later. Ryan says he quit his job as a doctor, got a job teaching as a result of the podcast. Kelly says, get new clients consistently. Glenn here, who has a horse podcast, said, earn a living talking and making the best friends in my space. A podcast about horses. You know what? There is a company that makes a shovel where, you know, when you scoop the horse stuff after a horse is done eating, you press a button and the shovel vibrates that crap off. That company sponsors Glenn's podcast and pays him money to be able to talk about that. It's a tool he already uses. Horse crap sponsorship. It's not a load of crap. And then I was asked, after sharing these series of tweets, curious to know what's your answer, Pat. And to answer this question, I hope you don't mind. I want to tell you a quick little story. And we're going to get into a little bit of podcasting mode really quick here, because podcasting is a perfect platform for story. And in 2011, about a year and a half after I started my show, you might remember I started in 2010 after wanting to start 2 years prior to that. I was feeling a little burnout, right? I was kind of trying to do everything on my own and more. And I was starting to get to the point where I was curious if I should continue the podcast or not. In fact, there were some thoughts of giving it up. You know, the blog and the traffic on the blog, blogs were much more popular back then. Search engines were much more friendly. We were getting a lot more traffic from the blog. It's like, okay, if we double down on the podcast, sure, but what if we double down instead on the blog? So we were weighing all these pros and cons, and I was very close to giving up on the podcast. It just, I was not growing as fast as I thought I was wanting to. And then that's when I got an email. It was an email from a man in Poland who sent me an email that said, the subject line was this: Pat, you saved my life. Now, one of two things crossed my mind when I got that subject line. I was like, wow, what is this story? Or two, this is a very, very bad clickbaity title. I hope it is actually true. And yes, it was true. So he was telling a story. His name was Michał from Poland. And he said that he had gotten into a bad accident and was bedridden. And that's when he found my podcast. But he was in a state of depression for over a year. He'd actually found my podcast soon after I started it. And he started listening to my show every single day. And he was getting out of depression. And he said that there was one episode in particular where I was talking about goal setting. And the idea that if you have big goals, you will actually be more likely to achieve them, right? And even if you don't hit those goals, you're actually striving and pushing yourself further than you would have otherwise. And so he decided with 2 broken legs that he was going to run a marathon in Warsaw, Poland. And he had about a year to do so, to train to rehabilitate himself. And in this email, he actually shared with me his x-rays. You can see his ankles were broken and he had plates in there. And he said that he was able to run the marathon as a result of the inspiration from the podcast. And you'll see that this is him. You'll see plates on his legs still, just to kind of help keep everything together. And he said that he kept this sign with him the entire time he was running because he wanted to cross the finish line and show it. And it's in Polish, and it says in Polish, "Thank you, God. Thank you to his wife and kids. And thank you, Pat Flynn." Every time I tell this story, bro. Sorry. I almost gave up on the podcast. And when, it was fate that this email came in when I was thinking those things, because I had no idea Michał existed. I did not know he was going through this struggle. And the cool thing was I met Michał several years later, like over 10 years later, at an event. And he actually gifted me that sign in person because the podcast, man, look at it. I have it here. This is the first time I'm showing it on stream. Look at that. Literally the same sign. I'm so happy. And I vowed from that point forward that I was never going to give up on the show, right? And Michał, with all that content that he was consuming about building a business, guess what? Started a company and built a blog and a business about personal finance. He got famous in Poland. He was been interviewed on television. He had the #1 podcast in literally all of Poland, which is insane. I mean, the trickle-down effect is crazy. And the coolest thing about this is he now has people who are listening to him who are putting Michał's name on signs because they've heard this story too, and they want to thank him. And if it wasn't for my show, he wouldn't have been able to pass forward a lot of that inspiration to others. So I want to ask you to not let yourself stop your show. Or if you're thinking of starting one, please do so, because you could keep those ripples going for everybody. It's absolutely crazy, the trickle effect that happens. And the hard thing is you don't often see it, right? You're not going to know every listener. You're not going to know what every person's going through. I would try to figure that out, and I think that's recommended, but you never know. But the truth is, if you don't put it out there, then you're helping nobody. That's true. So I want to ask you today, what was the #1 most helpful thing you learned during our training today? And also, how did you respond to it? I'd love to get a feel for how you enjoyed it. And we're going to have some guests coming in very soon today to talk a little bit more about Power Up Podcasting and the Academy and the accelerators and all those kinds of things. But really important, my goal here was to help you out today. And so I want to ask you what the number one most helpful thing you learned today during our training was. And it could be anything. So I'm curious to see and read some of this stuff. That was reminding me and encouraged me not to give up. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you. That story just told impact. Thank you. First time here, fan for life. Thank you, Future Business. Appreciate you. How many lives can we touch when we step outside of our comfort zone? And that's really what it takes, right? It takes us stepping outside of our comfort zone for sure. Sound Mind says Ninja Facebook group hack. There's a little bit of a delay, but that's okay. The encouragement tips for sure, like the myth that we were busting, the ninja trick for sure, practically the growth hack, increase production to my 3 podcasts when I'm launching, start and then build, start with not just one episode. I'm a video guy, just doing audio only stops me from creating a podcast. Then do a video podcast. Do it. You know you more than anybody else. The power of podcasting for building relationships, deepening intimacy. Love the Facebook group strategy. I won't give up, says Omni. I love that. Remembering the reason why I'm doing the podcast in the first place. I'm so happy to hear that graphic word live. Like, again, you have real human beings on the other end of those numbers, so don't forget that. Launch audio first, then video. It's not about being famous. I mean, that's a byproduct if you want that. Facebook group strategy. Thank you all so much for that. I appreciate you. I hope you really enjoy this. And I want to ask your permission. May I have your permission here in the chat to share a bit about Power Up Podcasting? I've talked about it a few times already, and our upcoming accelerator, which happens next week, where you can join other students and get some help from my team specifically, which has never been done before for this course. Type yes in the chat if that's okay. And once I see those, I want to make sure I can move forward, because I don't want to give you something that you don't want. And hopefully you really enjoyed the presentation here today. Very grateful for everybody. Seriously, this is probably our most attended webinar, and I'm so happy to hear that, because this podcast that you're going to create is something that will change lives and ultimately change yours as well. And we want to be a part of that story. We want to be the guides for you along the way. Look at that. Look at all the yeses coming in. I appreciate you so much. So Power Up Podcasting 2.0 came out a couple years ago. This was a refreshed version, all new videos with everything that you needed to know. And of course, things change, things evolve. Video podcasting is now a thing. So boom, PUP 3.0. PUP is Power Up Podcasting, launches today, which I'm so stoked for. This has been a long time coming, and my team has been working really hard to make sure that the course that you all are going to get today and with the accelerator and to go through with other students is the latest and greatest. And that includes everything from video podcasting, should you want to do that, to monetization, to getting set up, to the right hosts, and just, again, simplifying it. We actually removed some videos that you don't need, because we want to make the level of friction lower for you. We want it to be smooth like lotion as you start your podcast. I'm going to share with you a little bit about what's inside the course, in fact. We start with pre-launch. There's a lot of things to do leading up to the launch beforehand, like developing your show concept, sharing with you the tools and tactics that other podcasters use. And we want to create an evergreen content strategy for you, because we don't want you to just start your show and then go, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. We want you to already know what those things are, and they're going to be largely based off what the audience might already want. Then we're going to learn how to be attractive on the microphone, which means using inflection. This is something that a lot of podcasters don't teach, which is pausing like this can sometimes bring the listener a little closer, right? The storytelling, the way that you use your voice is a very important component of this, and we'll talk about that. Mastering the art of the ask to get people to say yes to coming on your show, learning how to be an effective interviewer. We just scratched the surface with that today. And then creating calls to actions that convert on your podcast, because people are listening on the go. So if you give them 10 things to do, they're not going to do any of them, right? Master your introductory hook, find your competitive edge, and develop a personalized launch plan for you. That means you have your own story. You are where you are in your business, and wherever you're at, we're going to give you a launch plan that makes sense for you. Then comes launch week, right? Where you're going to prepare your podcast for Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places. We're going to help you get support from your network as well. What messages to send them, how to ask without feeling like you're asking too much, and building anticipation for your launch event. Then on launch day, you're going to go big with your 3 episodes. Like I said, sit back and celebrate your brand new show, and you're going to power up your business. What's really cool is a lot of people go, okay, then what, Pat? Well, guess what? Because you'll be getting access to this inside of the All Access Pass, with the All Access Pass, you get access to literally all the courses we have. And that includes our Amped Up Podcasting course, which is the 2.0 course that you'll go into after to learn how to hire a team to edit your stuff, to grow, to turn it into a business, to list build, all those kinds of things, right? And then post-launch, how to keep your show at the top of the rankings and automate the entire process a little bit more, monetization, advertising, list building, etc. And then the new video podcasting module, which is really great. And yes, it is separate from 2.0. Many of the things are the same as 2.0, and 2.0 will still work, but this includes a lot more updated information, especially the video podcasting stuff, which is, again, now inside of the All Access Pass only. We used to sell Power Up Podcasting for $699, and we sold thousands of copies of this course as a standalone course, which launched in 2017. But we did something a little bit different. It's a little bit inspired by some in-person workshops that I held before the COVID pandemic, and these were really helpful. I mean, these had like 100% success rates, and this is Dr. Shannon Irvin to come and offer a testimonial when we were there in San Diego, and I was running the Power Up Podcasting workshop, which is really cool. So we decided to create something a little bit different. We're no longer going to be offering our courses one-off like we used to, because we found that the results coming in from those weren't as strong as what we could do otherwise, which is what we now call the All Access Pass. And this was something that was launched in 2022. You can get literally all of our online courses, plus PUP 3.0 and workshops, more than a dozen, all in one spot. You get access to an active community of other like-minded entrepreneurs like you. Doing this together is a lot better than doing this with others. We also have the access to the Team SPI. They're going to guide you along the way. Everybody from Ashley to David to, Heather is in there as well. So many amazing people are going to help you through that. Guided pathways through our various courses. So it would be one thing to just go, here's all our courses, go. No. If you are a podcaster, there is a very specific path of courses within our stuff that you take. If you are ready to start launching your business and doing email, okay, you take email the smart way, then you go into the traffic building workshop and all these other things. You don't and shouldn't go through all these courses. You're going to go through the right ones that make sense for you. And to give you access to all of them is very different and something that we're really, really excited about. And then finally, our accelerators. These are classes of people throughout the year that we take through the journey of going through a course together, led by one of our instructors, which is really cool. And this way, you have a much higher chance of getting questions answered when you need to get inspired by others, to create groups to go through them together, and to get direct help from our team. And the accelerator for Power Up Podcasting starts next week on September 28th, which is super exciting. I'm so stoked for that, and I couldn't be more grateful for just all the prep work the team's doing to make sure that you are guided through that experience. Speaking of, here are a list of the courses that you can get, and that's everything from our A to Z webinars course, our community building course, which is brand new, our heroic online course. If you need help finding a new niche, Smart from Scratch, our YouTube course is in there as well. And like I said, we used to sell these courses individually. You can see the price points there, $6.99, $4.99, $5.99, hundreds of dollars. You get access to all of those inside of the All Access Pass and all the workshops as well. So my question to you is, what do you think, knowing that all of those are hundreds of dollars each, now that you get access to all of them, how much do you think that might be? You got a number in your head. It's not what it actually is, because what you can get access to, you can get access to for the equivalent of $59 a month. That's it. We wanted to lower the barrier to entry for everybody. So this is billed quarterly at $179. You can save a little bit of money by going annual as well if you wanted to. But this is an absolute steal. This is the price of what would have been one of our courses, and it's been broken down into quarterly to help you out even more. So I ask you, if you want to sign up by Wednesday. Sign up now, in fact. There's also a special deal going on with our company over at Fusebox. You get 3 free months of hosting if you go through the links inside of the course as well, which is a huge value. Sign up by Wednesday, September 27th to get into the next accelerator. Join our All Access Pass today. And speaking of accelerator, I wanted to bring a guest on who is literally the mastermind behind why our accelerators exist. Her name is Ashley, and I want to bring her on right now. So we have Ashley from Team SPI. What's up, Ashley? How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Now, we hired you specifically to help us with curriculum inside of our courses. You know, we had all these one-off courses, you went through them all, and you started to see that people wanted to get access to more of them. And there was like some pathways through them. What inspired you to create the all access pass in the way it is and give and not just give access to all the courses, but like even for my purposes, how did you wrap your head around getting the best experience through the SPI curriculum?
Yes. Wow, that is a loaded
It
question.
is a very loaded
So
question.
my background, yeah, my background is in education. So I was a teacher for 7 years. I have my master's degree in curriculum and instruction. And one of the biggest things that I know is not everybody learns in the same way. And so looking at the history of our courses, we had a lot of people buying them and just not finishing them or not just having that motivation that they needed. And so I knew when I came in being a part of the All Access Pass, I wanted to create ways where people didn't just have like the library of their courses, but they also were able to go through it with others if they chose. They were able to have that accountability. Maybe they wanted just to go through that course and talk to others about it and not necessarily have that week by week accountability. Or maybe they only needed one module of a course. That's there too. And so we have the accelerators, like you talked about, for those people who need that extra motivation. But we also have more bite sized events and workshops. And one thing I want to mention, I just popped in, as you know. So if you already mentioned it, great. But we do have a workshop tomorrow, actually, for existing podcasters on how to repurpose your content. And that could be great for people who are just beginning as well to view later down the road. And what's really nice is all of our workshops, our members can attend live, but they also have the ability to watch them back. So I could go on and on about how much there is to do in the All Access Pass. But the biggest thing to take away is there's really something for every learning style, for every type of niche, no matter what you're in, and where you are in your journey.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. It's you know, here's all the info, and let us help you find your way through them. Right? It's not like we're just dumping you into a library and saying, "Hey, okay, we got your money. Like now it's your turn to figure it out." We're going to be there with you to help figure it out, and this is something that we want to make sure is understood, because a lot of people will put you in a course and then just kind of like let you be, and that's what we did for a very long time. But community and getting access to the other people going through it with you, and of course like the accelerator happening, which again I highly recommend everybody get into this course now, because the accelerator starts for Power Up Podcasting next week, and you'll be able to go through it like a class together. And the cool thing is, unlike what we once called cohort-based courses where you had to show up to kind of watch the lecture, the lessons are already there, and the lessons are just a few minutes in length, and so you get through a chunk of them per Ashley and Heather's recommendation, and then you get through that by the end of the week, and you can do that on your own time. If you have questions, you can show up to the office hours, those kinds of things. This sort of community-powered course structure is something that we're really kind of trying to own at SPI, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, perhaps last question here is, might you be able to speak to like the results that people are getting inside of the group versus what we had before?
Absolutely. So what I'm seeing, so before and all across the board, the average, I believe, for online courses, not just SPI, but about 15% of people who purchase them or have access to them actually finish them. And so with our accelerators, what I'm seeing, I haven't crunched the data exactly, but it's over half, at least over half are finishing. And so
That's
that's
amazing.
really showing that motivation, and not only are they finishing the course, but they're actually doing something with it. And so we've had accelerators on our YouTube from scratch course before, and we have very successful YouTube channels already out there. We have people who have gone through our community business blueprint course who have full-fledged communities now. So it's not only getting them through the course, but also giving them that guidance to actually take action throughout it. And so it's not just watching and then now what?
Right. Right. And what happens after? It's not like, okay, the course is done, like goodbye. It's like, okay, what might the next best thing be for you
Yes.
here? Maybe it's this workshop, maybe it's building a mastermind group, maybe it's connecting with the community. Like we want to have you stick with us, right? Which
Yeah.
is why, like, from an economics point of view, it's like, well, then it makes sense to give you a lower barrier to entry to come in, right? At like $59 per month or $179 per quarter, which is what it's billed at. More people can come in, and if you come in and you get the one thing you need, then okay, then you got what you need. But you're going to see that there's so much more to offer. And again, the challenge for us at SPI is like, okay, how do we make sure you're not overwhelmed through this process? And that's where you come in, and Heather, and we kind of help guide you through that, which is really amazing. Now, speaking of results, I have a guest in the green room who's ready to show up. So, Ashley, thank you so much for all you've done for SPI, and everybody's going to look forward to seeing and hanging out with you. I see some people in the chat already. By the way, the accelerator, I saw a question, is built into the All Access Pass, should you choose to want to do them. And we run them how often, Ashley? And there's no additional charge if you're paying monthly already.
Yeah. Yes, there is no additional charge. So we run about 1 to 2 accelerators at a time. We don't want people to get overwhelmed. And we also survey the community to see what you want to see in an accelerator. So once you're done with this podcasting course, you have a say in what our next accelerator is going to be. So they typically last about 2 months or so. This course and starting a podcast is going to take about 2.5 months. But they run every 2 to 3 months, 1 or 2 at a time.
That's awesome. Yeah. And sorry, I misquoted there. Billed quarterly or annually, not monthly, but it's the equivalent of basically $59 a month. And yeah, the accelerators are built in. The next one starts on Thursday next week. So get it now while you can. Sign up for that. You'll be taken through onboarding, and we try to make things as simple as possible. And if you are confused, we're there to help you. Like, we are accessible, right? And that's the difference between us and what we feel other people and other communities have is we want to be there for you. So Ashley, thank you so much for all you've done, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat.
I'm going to kick you now.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Now I'm going to assign our good friend Devin, who is a member of our community. Devin, what's up, my friend? How are you?
Good. How are you? It's an honor to be here. Thanks
I'm
for
grateful that
letting
you're
me be
here.
a part.
And I love your sign. We were just talking about this right before the never, never, never give up. I mean, I almost wanted to give up on my show, and I'm so glad I didn't. And you just recently started yours. Why don't you mind really quick telling everybody what your podcast is about and sort of who you're there to serve?
So it's about yerba mate, which is a tea from South America, basically, to make it simple. And I'm just trying to, because there's not really a lot of English-speaking people in the world that understand this, and trying to make this more global instead of condensed to only South America. My wife is from Argentina, so that's helping me bridge that connection. And right now, the podcast is almost to 1,000 downloads in about 16 episodes. I just released 17 today, and we're in 35 countries. So as far as worldwide, thanks to you, it's pretty mind-boggling that that many people want to listen to me talk about something that almost no one knows about.
So yerba mate, I've seen yerba mate at some of the specialty stores near me, and it seems to be a growing industry. So I think you've come in at the right time, which is really great. And what's going to happen, Devin, is because you have this voice in the community now, you're going to find that not only are you interviewing perhaps other people who are making these things, but other industry leaders are going to come to you and want to actually amplify their message, and the connections that you're now going to make. Would you ever want to start your own yerba mate, like, branded drink, you think, one day?
Well, that definitely, yes. And that's what I'm still trying to figure out. Like, because as you know, like, the audience, and especially here in America, we're not used to maybe the traditional way of what I explain, and trying to, you've probably seen it in energy cans, and that's what's more familiar, I guess, here. So still trying to figure that out as far as product wise. But I guess just to go back what you said, the crazy thing is just the connections and networking that it's given me.
It's already helped you
for
in that
talking
regard.
on the internet. Oh yes, it's gone like crazy, because it's like all of a sudden now people are paying attention. It's like, oh, you've got a podcast. You're like official or something. And now people are reaching out to me and wanting to get on the episode, wanting to be on there. They want to advertise. They want to talk to me. They sending me all kinds of free stuff, which, I mean, I know that's not the reason I'm doing it, but getting free stuff that you're already going to do anyways, it's pretty cool.
You have a lot of also yerba mate fans in the chat right now saying it's the best. Didn't know there was a podcast for it. Well, now you do. Now you got a new subscriber, which is
now you
great.
do.
Really quick, I don't want to take too much of your time. Tell me about how SPI and specifically like the All Access Pass has been for you. What's that experience been like? What were you thinking going into it, and what has it done for you?
So shout out to your episode. I don't remember which number, but when you interviewed a student that had ham radio, I think is what his thing was.
Yeah.
Scanner
Phil
school
Lichtenberger.
or something. Yes, that was like, wow, if he can do it, then I can too. And it's like, if mine's even feel like even more niche than his. And so that made me want to, okay, I got to learn how to do this, get this podcasting thing. My community also, I kind of polled them. Yeah, you should do it. Like, really? Okay. So how do I get started? So that's why I got into SPI. And that course, as you know, has been successful, but I feel like it's very helps you get all the stuff that you overthink is really simple, to be honest. And I tell people that, hey, just a couple steps. Here's the whole explanation on the course, and you'll get through it. And then it's just continue to produce. The accelerators have been very helpful because that also gives me some feedback really quickly and instantly about, hey, what do you think about this? Here's a title. What do you think about this? Reaching out to people as well. And just having a framework, I think, more than anything, of like just do these tasks has been very helpful.
That's awesome.
Got me to where I'm at.
Which accelerator or accelerators have you taken part of?
So the podcasting one, I was going to do email marketing, but decided I wasn't really ready for that, so I switched to the YouTube one that we're going on right now.
Yep.
That one, I'll be honest, for just you guys out there, that YouTube is it's a little bit of a behemoth right now for me. The podcasting, I would say, start there. That one's, I don't know, the most rewarding, instant gratification, but also lowest threshold, I would say personally.
Yep.
But that's the only part that I've been in so far.
So I had forgotten that. It's actually been a while since we did the podcasting one. When we did that, how was it for you as far as like time and dedication to put into it? Again, we built it in a way so that you could fit it into your own time. It obviously you're gonna have to watch some videos to get through it, but the lessons are pretty short. Can you talk about sort of how much time it actually took for you to get things rolling?
So I think it's like you said, it's going to be on your own kind of time schedule. But I think the one thing that you said that helped everyone else out as well is just put a date on the calendar
Yep.
and just get there. It probably took me honestly about 6 weeks. I think I was going to try to cram it into 1 month, and I realized, okay, I need about 2 more weeks to get a couple episodes, which worked great. The advice you said of putting 3 up there and then launch them all at the same time, because then I had like a little bit extra time window to come up with a couple more episodes and before, instead of feeling rushed. And um, that I guess that's uh, 6 weeks. I guess
6 weeks.
the short answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that was alongside the accelerator, right? Like as the accelerator was going on, like you were building and kind of doing it at the same time as everybody else.
Yeah, and I probably did it the hardest way, to be honest, because almost all my episodes I'm interviewing someone, which that's, as you know, a whole thing in itself of trying to set up a time and get them everybody, all that stuff, which now Google has a calendar invite you can just send to people, which has been super helpful. But yeah, so I probably did it a lot harder than it should be as far as just recording 3 solo episodes. And in that case, you know, I think if you and just starting out, just do anything. Your first episode's always going to suck, and I think that's the encouragement that anybody will tell you. Just do the first one, just get it over with, just say whatever, and you'll be surprised because right now it's the most downloaded episode I have, even though I know it sucks and it's the worst. But because it's, I guess, your first episode, everybody wants to go back and listen to that, and I refuse to change it because I want to go back and listen to that and say like, wow, look where I've come. So, anyways, all
No,
the
that's
things
great.
I know you've said, but now to hear it from someone that's been through it. So
Yeah, no, thank you, Devin. That's really helpful, and to hear your perspective, especially still here in the early days, but already seeing success come from your podcast and more to come for sure. Just thank you so much for trusting us to help you. Well done. We are here to guide all of you, but you still, like Devin, have to take action. We hope you do take action today and get in this accelerator that's coming up, because it's actually going to be a 10-week accelerator. So we're spacing things out a little bit, giving you more cushion, and that way you'll be able to launch your podcast together with everybody before the new year, which is sort of the plan here and why we timed it this way. So Devin, thank you so much. One more time, what's your Yerba Mate podcast called so we can all go subscribe to it and get more interested in it?
Appreciate it, Pat. It's Yerba Power Podcast.
Yerba Power
and thanks
Podcast.
to the SPI community. They helped me come up with the title and the image and everything. So
dude, I love it, man. We'll keep on keeping on, never give up, and we'll talk soon. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye. Awesome. Super fun. Always great to chat with members of the community. And it's just so it makes I'm literally getting goosebumps right now thinking about your success. It's something that really inspires me. You probably heard a podcast episode that I published earlier about one of the things that's going to help you drive forward is thinking about the wins that your customers will have. And if you aren't feeling super jazzed when somebody who you're trying to help gets the result, then something's off. And I get so excited when I think about that. So anyway, I just appreciate you all for being here today. So here is where you need to go. If you go to smartpassiveincome.com/pup, that's where you need to go. That'll give you access to all of our courses, all of our workshops, the community, and all those kinds of things. And of course, like I said, the accelerator starts next week, so you can sign up and prepare yourself for that, and we'll help you through it. Speaking of getting through it, this is Bob Baker, one of our members inside of the accelerator and inside of our All Access Pass, who just crossed 5 million downloads with his podcast, Affirmation Meditation Podcast. And we love to celebrate the wins from our own members. And hopefully you can be up here one day yourself. This is Rob Stewart, who sent me a message. He's the Disney Travel Secrets podcaster. I have some messages saved from 2017 when I helped him out. And it's all about how quickly he started to see success. So it was only been about a year after. His business grew by 300% as a result of coming out with his podcast, which is wild. And then he later sent me a message that was this, which is, "Hey, Pat, thank you for reaching out. I was trying to schedule a Disney vacation with him." But he said, "I want to talk to you about how Power Up Podcasting has completely changed our business and our life." And it's just absolutely so exciting to see that many of you are here. Our most highly attended webinar today was my favorite one, my favorite topic, podcasting. And to pass forward a lot of the information to you, whether you end up in the course or not, that's okay. I want you to use this information, not let this be a waste of time. I see some of you in the chat have already signed up, which is really amazing. So thank you. Thank you, pal. I appreciate that. I noticed where I went wrong there with the eCam sound levels. But anyway, I appreciate you. Tell me in the chat if you have any questions. We're here for the next, I would say, 10 minutes, and I'd love to answer as many questions as possible for you. smartpassiveincome.com/pup. One thing that Pal mentioned was that my guest's audio was 50% louder than mine. In the course, we teach you a way for you to solve that. Now, I'm doing this via video live. You won't have to worry about people seeing it before you edit it out. But there's a lot of ways to what's called normalize your podcast. There's some tools out there that you can use no matter what you're using to edit. GarageBand has this sort of automatically built in. There's a lot of tools that can help you adjust the sound levels so that if you're too high or another person's too high, they can match up and it'll be a perfect audio at the right level for your listenership, which would be cool. You're welcome, Elizabeth. I appreciate you. Also, always looking for feedback. Let me know about the presentation specifically today. It was a brand new one. I've shared some of this stuff before, but I wanted to include some other new things today. So if you had a moment just to share, just to kind of provide feedback, we're going to take a screenshot of some of that and send it to people who maybe missed out on the and we'll give them inspiration to go and check out the replay for this. Because again, I hope this was super valuable for you. But if you wanted to offer a little bit of just like what you thought about this presentation, that'd be great. And again, most importantly, the place to go is smartpassiveincome.com/pup, P-U-P, so you can get in now and try it out and work with Ashley and our team and Heather for the next 10 weeks to help you get through that, which would be amazing. Is AI addressed in the 3.0 course? It is not addressed in the 3.0 course. However, we do have an AI workshop that I held a couple months ago that is available for replay, where we talk about how to use it as a content creator and how you can use it as a tool. My advice with AI is it's sort of like a calculator. It helps you do a lot of these things or think about things a little bit faster, which can get you to the result. What I don't recommend is using AI and then just like taking that and actually, no, that's not true. There is AI talked about in the course. We talk about a tool called Descript, and Descript is a tool that uses AI to make editing even easier for you as well. All right. Claudia says, Pat, if someone's show is more entertainment-based and not business or teaching-related, would the PUP course still be helpful in that as well? Oh, absolutely. We've had a lot of entertainment-based stuff. And honestly, if you have a business-based one, you should try to make your shows a little bit more entertaining, right? Infotainment, if you will. But yes, we've had some comedians and other people like that use our stuff just to get started. Again, the main thing is just to kind of get you to that point where you can start just getting on a microphone and hitting record, whether it's just you or you with somebody else. And if it's more entertainment based, I think you have a big advantage because you could potentially just hold people for much longer who find you and enjoy your stuff. So yes, absolutely. Thoughts on random stories from the awesome Dreb, or simply inner thoughts, introspection stories. Everyone have special topics, or where did it go? Thoughts on random stories or simply inner thoughts, introspection stories. Everyone has special topics or niche. While I want to go share me stories or thoughts, how can I leverage a special niche? I think it's important, like sharing little introspections or thoughts and things like that, kind of like quote unquote randomly is okay, but there has to be some sort of thread line, right? Very rare do we find like, oh, it's the, like from scratch, it's the person. And you have to have sort of this certain riz or charisma to you in order to attract people and be able to talk about anything that you could ever want from scratch and grow right from the beginning. Typically, what happens is you specialize and you maybe have a thread line through a lot of the stories. These are stories of people from New York, for example. These are stories of me as a parent. These are stories of me as an addict, perhaps. And then from there, you gain an audience, you gain a following who loves you for you, and then that enables you to perhaps talk about other things that you want elsewhere, whether it's a private episode for your patrons or maybe another podcast or specifically on YouTube or just social media, wherever the case may be. But stories is the key word there. Stories are definitely what's going to win. Hi, Pat. When I choose my podcasting name, do I have to submit the name to some sort of website to make sure no one else has the same name? Podcast names, like book title names, cannot be sort of like owned, if you will. Like if somebody already has that podcast name, you could potentially use it. I wouldn't recommend it. I would do, number one, a quick search on Apple Podcasts and Spotify just to see if there's any podcasts that have the same name. If there is, I would just, even though you could potentially create the same name, I would modify it a little bit. Maybe put a modifier at the beginning or end or change it. The reason not being because, you might get like sued or something. I'll talk about that in just a second. But more so, it's just when people start searching for your podcast, they're going to find the other person. It's going to take a very long time for you to sort of like overtake them as a new podcaster in search and all those kinds of things, especially when you start telling your audience to go find it on elsewhere, on these podcast platforms. The idea of being sued. Now, there are brand names that have podcasts, and those brand names, in fact, are trademarked, and you definitely don't want to copy those either. So, you could do a patent search or something like that, but I would recommend just going into podcast directories and searching for those names there. I'm not a lawyer. Funny moment I talked about on my live now. I heard your guest tone and thought it was mine. LOL for Ecamm. Oh, you heard it too? I think it's because it's coming in system audio. I wonder if there's a setting for that to not have that come through, although I was in the zone, so I might not have noticed. That's funny. Diane says, I've been trying to sign up, but says service unavailable. Anyone else getting that message? smartpassiveincome.com/pup. Let's see what happens. I don't know which parts are unavailable, but you'll see here there's 9 days left till the accelerator begins, so you want to make sure you subscribe. And if you scroll down here and click on this nice little green button that's down here, you'll see the other courses and things that you can get access to. Where is it? I think it's here somewhere. Oh, I missed it. I think it's above. Right here, view all the access. So all of these things you will get access to, including YouTube from scratch and all the others. This is an amazing deal, an absolute steal. So I hope it's working. If not, on another browser, it might. Excellent presentation, very fresh, and not your typical webinars. Thank you, Angie. I appreciate you. When you were discussing tone and inflection, I thought it was really impactful that you were off screen so that we could pay attention to listening how impactful it really was. Thank you for that. I will remember to do that next time. That's great. Hey, Pat, when I choose, let's see, we talked about that one already. Sorry, I'm just bouncing around, so I'm not necessarily going in order. Circle is down. Of course. Murphy's Law, no matter what you do, sometimes the world just has a way of saying, nope, not right now. And that's okay. Because this happens, it's usual, it's expected, and it's all right. So we have some emails being sent out a little bit later. If you cannot get in now, that is totally okay, because we will be able to get you in before the accelerator, which is going to be our goal. You'll hear from us, And once you make that purchase, then you won't hear from us to sell it to you, but you'll hear from us as far as how to get ready for the accelerator coming up. So don't worry about that. Thank you so much. Pat, you're in the zone. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you. Question from Cynthia, who says, how do you find video podcasts? Where do you go and how do you search the directory of what's being published? So if you go into YouTube, you can actually go into a podcast section or just look up podcasts. The YouTube Music app is where you might be able to find some as well. Spotify also has podcasts too, and you'll be able to see and I think filter based on which video podcasts are there as well. YouTube is a little bit harder because it is just, truthfully, and one maybe pet peeve I have is the fact that, well, I could publish a video of me eating spaghetti with ASMR and I can mark it as a podcast and it would, to YouTube's concern, in YouTube's eyes, it would be a podcast. Now, the truth is, it's not going to be recommended as a podcast once people who view that like step away from it, and then the algorithm will do its thing. But I find that really interesting. No worries, Corey. Appreciate you for being here. Let's see. Lavanya says, hey, Pat, question. I want to build a podcast around working parents working at big corporations. And turns out there's a concern from their corporate affairs. Does that mean I need a new concept? If there is a concern, then it's going to be very difficult for you unless you use something like a pen name or a stage name, which is totally possible. I know some people who do that. It reminds me of a woman, Silicon Valley Girl, SVG. She's a woman who works in Silicon Valley, a very male-dominated area. And she didn't want her identity to be known. So that is a possibility to go down that route. But also, I understand the concern from corporations. Some corporations are not all about that, and some are actually in big favor of that, like Elon Musk, and Tesla. They're all about user-generated content and things like that from their fans and users and even some employees, which is kind of cool. So I understand that. I think a new concept might be interesting or something in and around that, right? It perhaps might be mindset for the busy mom, right? For example. So just kind of brainstorming there. But and then in those stories, obviously you can be like, okay, well, I am a mom and I work at a corporation and here are the struggles that I have. And you can interview people who have the same struggles perhaps. And that way it's not necessarily like anti-corporation, if you will, but it just, that's just a part of you. Spaghetti, says Kathy. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Does the program cover how to get people on the interview? Yes, there's a specific module on literally how to reach out to somebody and get them to say yes without it being weird. Do you have to pay them? I have never paid anybody to be on my show. And in most cases, that doesn't happen. There are services and there are some podcasters who will actually take payment to have guests on their show. Which I don't necessarily agree upon unless it's like a special circumstance. But in general, it's going to be relational, right? You as the podcast host already have value to share because you are providing a platform for somebody. And in that regard, you don't ever have to feel like it's always going to be about you. You make it about them, featuring their story. One thing that we talk about in the courses, for example, if a person's coming out with a book soon, prime time. That's a great time to ask a person to be on your show because they're saying yes to everything at that point. They want their book to go to as many people as possible, right? So that's an idea, for example. Should I be asking people to subscribe, like, and write a review in every episode? No. My opinion is that if you create content, no matter what platform, if you're creating content and you're delivering what you're promising, you're getting right into it so you can hook them in the beginning, you're not wasting their time with asking them to do something like and subscribe and leave a review before they've even finished everything, then you drop that entertainment, that information, that infotainment. You give them something valuable. And then one call to action at the end, like, hey, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out, very quickly could work. But truthfully, if you don't even do that, you will get people to subscribe, especially if they really enjoy and want more. A person subscribes because of what they want to come, not because of what they just heard. Because of what a subscription is not a vote of, yes, I like this episode. A subscription is, this was amazing. I want more of this, and more hopefully will come. A little bit of a mindset shift there. Mindy just pinged me about the day Pup was launched, and it was the same day Amazon Web Services went down. Half the internet broke. Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember that. That's crazy. Hearing your first episode's great. Awesome. Question: what are your thoughts on sporadic uploads, like weeks you have more than one or not? So my recommendation would be to try to be as consistent as possible. And if you are going to drop more than one like let's say you go one episode a week, and then for a special week, it's like, I don't know, St. Patrick's Day week. And so to commemorate that, since my name is Patrick, I'm going to publish 2 episodes. That's a really dumb idea. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to make a big deal and have 2 episodes come out. That's totally fine to have some bonuses and some extras. Being sporadic doesn't do yourself any favors. I will say some people are okay because people are just like, I'm so hungry for the next episode and I don't care how long it takes. Like, Hardcore History is one where they come out with an episode like every 2 months or every 3 months. And it's not even really known when it's going to come out. But when it does, everybody jumps to it because every episode's like hours in length and it's so highly produced and it's amazing. But in general, having at least some sort of consistency will favor you because you want to build a habit. People are habitual listeners of podcasts. And if you don't allow for that habit to start and form, it's going to be very difficult for you to get that repeat user coming in who's going to listen just because you came out with an episode rather than you have to sell every episode to them, if you will. What are certain days not to launch an episode? I think it depends on your audience. There are industries where it makes sense to come out on Monday. Wednesday is when we come out with our podcast episodes, I think. Yes? Tuesday? No, Tuesday's newsletter podcast is Wednesday. Check out Amped Up Podcasting inside of All Access for how to get a team to do a lot of the stuff for you. So anyway, shout out to my team. And then there's some where it makes sense to do it in the weekend because that's when your weekend listeners are available. So it's going to take some experimentation. You can move things around. You can change your consistency over time. You can remove and change your artwork. You can change your description. You can change your entire podcast over time if you find that you want to go a different direction. And that's okay. The main thing is you just want to try to remain consistent as possible. And over time, you'll be able to see those patterns or not. Open Pokemon cards? No. Wrong channel, bro. Pat, if it's a monthly podcast, would you settle on a date for release and stick to that? Thank you. If it's a monthly podcast, I would say have it be like first Wednesday of the month kind of thing, right? That way you can relay that and share it, right? If you always say it's on the 3rd of every month, that's okay too. If it's just like, make it easy for people to consume. That's okay. Is it okay to pre-record an episode and launch later? Absolutely. In fact, that is recommended. Inside the course, you'll hear about something called batch recording. And again, the course is available here at smartpassiveincome.com/pup. Right. The link that's right here that I'm covering right now. smartpassiveincome.com/pup. We're going to go for 2 more minutes, everybody, and fit in the 2 hours just like we promised. Absolutely. You want to get ahead on these things. In fact, we at SPR, we're about 2 months ahead on our podcast. Some industries don't lend themselves to that much cushion, right? And I would say maybe the worst industry to be in as far as like getting ahead on your podcast is like sports, because you don't know what the score is until it happens, right? So things like fantasy football and just sports in general, that's hard to get ahead on unless it's something not real-time related. But in general, getting ahead is definitely the way to go. You'll see in the course when you launch with 3, you'll have also a couple more in the can. That way you can focus on making noise and making announcements, scheduling your next interviews and getting reviews, all those kinds of things. Pat, any tips to stand out in a saturated market? I'm doing a wine podcast. Yes, so personality is going to be really key, right? What about wine? What is it exactly? Maybe it's a particular kind of wine. I know that Gary Vee, for example, had a wine thing, but maybe it's specifically all about Cabernets, right? Or Pinot Noirs. The Pinot podcast, the Pinot Noir now. I don't know. I'm just making this up. The Shandy shenanigans. Shandy's not even a wine. I don't know what I'm saying. It's been 2 hours. We had good energy, and I'm losing it now. No, I appreciate y'all for sticking around to the end and just hear me entertain myself here. Again, thank you so much for today. I appreciate you. Niching down is one way to go about it. Niching down in sort of topic, right? So the different wines. You can niche down to people. Wine for the everyday person, right? Wine for dads, wine for moms. It could be a particular stance you have on wine. There's niche down. The riches are in the niches. You can always branch out from there. The other way to go about it would be to, again, just bring your personality. Everybody's going to be talking about wine, sure, but nobody talks about it in the way that you do. Nobody brings you. I interviewed a woman yesterday. Her name is Liz Wilcox. She talks about email marketing. A very dry, not good dry like wine, but bad dry like email topic. But she brings her 90s love into everything that she does, literally on her website, in her personality. She had an NSYNC poster behind her, and you could feel it in her voice when I was interviewing her. It was amazing. And so she was able to bring a lot of relatability to things because she's just so in love with 90s stuff. And it was really easy to connect with her. So your personality and the way that you bring yourself can be a part of that as well. Thanks, Pat. This was awesome. Great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And if you are trying to sign up, there is an error right now on Circle, which is our platform where we're hosting this course. And we might have caused it. I don't know. But there's a lot of people trying to get in. So don't worry if you can't get in. We'll make sure you get in if you want to before the accelerator starts in 9 days. But we'll send you an email to follow up. And hopefully, team, if you're watching this, let's wait till Circle comes back before we send those emails. All right. What were the 5 things about Facebook ads? I don't know. I was just making that up. I don't do Facebook ads. I was just making that up as a hook. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you for coming in today. One more time, smartpassiveincome.com/pup. And thank you for being here and for believing in yourself and for not giving up. And I hope that we'll be able to see you inside of the All Access Pass and inside the accelerator next week. So get in now while you can, smartpassiveincome.com/pup. Peace, everybody. Appreciate you.